name is Madeline. I'm an alcoholic. So my water bottle is too big to put anywhere up here. For the record, I don't sponsor those two. Yeah. So my hi. Hi. How are you? Are you gonna share with me? Yeah. Okay. I'm like, I don't know. Okay. Cool. My sobriety, I can't do this. Hey, just looking around. All right, that's cool. My sobriety date is July 4th of 2005. My home group is There Is a Solution in Raleigh Springs, in Cary. We moved. Yep. All right. I was just thinking, we little kids in AA meetings are a lot like just drunk new people, like it's okay. We love you all, like they run around and shout things and it's fine, it's cool. So, all right, focus. Our group just moved to Cary a few months ago. It was in Raleigh Springs the whole 12 years before that, so I got used to saying Raleigh Springs for a long time. But it's been good. It's good. Our group has actually grown. Our last business meeting, I can't even believe this. We had 41 people at our regular, normal business meeting. Like, that's amazing, like that just doesn't really happen. And most of the people wanted to be there, at least that's what I don't know, maybe they lied to me, but it was good. It was good. I'm very impressed. So anyway, this is so weird. Okay, so I guess I'll just get started with my story. I do have notes to keep me on track just in case there was a child running around. So I'm really bad ADD too, so this is like a storm. Anyway, so I am from the city of Chicago. I was born and raised, but not bred. I came from one alcoholic parent and one that did not drink. I don't know. I did not realize that I was seeing drinking in the house until way later. I just thought my dad was kind of weird. And I mean, he's legit weird, but even without the alcohol. But, I just did not realize that he was drunk weird when I was growing up most of the time. And my mom, whatever, she's your classic Al-Anon without Al-Anon. But they did the best they could. I have two older siblings, and, we've each had our share of things that are, I guess you could say, wrong. I don't know, things that just made life challenging, difficult. And so by the time, I kind of got into my drinking and alcoholism, they had set the bar really low. So it was like, my parents my dad didn't know what was going on, but my mom, she just let me do whatever I wanted because she knew I was going to do it anyway. So, my parents separated when I was, I think, 1 and divorced when I was 2, so I had no memory of them together. Fortunately, my dad stayed in town, and he had us on the weekends and over the summer, but my mom raised us in, we went to Catholic school, and then my mom was practicing some kind of Eastern religion herself, and then we went through all the sacraments, but then every summer I'd go to church camp with my dad's born-again Christian fundamentalist group, and then every Sunday I'd be at my dad's, I'd wake up there, and we'd go to 3 hours of service with youth group and all that, and then he'd take me back to my mom's, and I'd go to 5 o'clock Mass, and the only reason I explained some of that, sorry, I get really hot sometimes, hormones, something to look forward to later in life, ladies. I was really confused about what God was and about what religion and spirituality, and I didn't know the difference between any of that when I first got here, but when I got here, I firmly believed that God didn't exist. That I didn't believe. I don't know what it was. It just depends on the day whether I was atheist or agnostic, but I know that I was going to convert to my dad's at one point, and that I had an experience that showed me that it was not for me, and then I think I just, at that point, I just decided that I was going to believe in whatever I wanted or nothing at all. But I think, especially as an alcoholic, even though I hadn't started drinking yet, because when all that happened, I was 13 maybe, and I hadn't started drinking yet. And I decided that, like I said, I was just gonna, let life unfold and like kind of explore whatever was there. And as an alcoholic, I need something to believe in. I think people in general need a kind of spirit presence, and we get that when we come together, and especially if we have a singleness of purpose, regardless of what it is, whether it's volunteer work or actual work or anything else, we can find that in places and relationships. But with alcoholics, I believe, at least for me, when I started drinking, that's what I found. I found that spiritual connectedness I had been looking for my entire life. I fall under that same category of people who just felt uncomfortable and didn't fit, and, all the same classic things that alcoholics have before they start drinking. I even accused my parents of adopting me because there was one photograph of me as a baby, whereas my sister and brother, there were a lot, and there was only one of me, and I was like, yeah, it's because you didn't have me, like you got me later. And I look exactly like my mom, so it's not definitely, well, I guess a perfect cross between my two parents. But the older I get, the more I look like my mom, so it's undeniable I came from her. I think my first experience that I remember drinking that really made a difference for me was I was at a party and I was really concerned about what everybody else thought, and I was very insecure and quiet, and at times now I can still be what you might call shy, even though that's not typically what I am. So I was very quiet and just withdrawn, and then I started drinking just because, that's what everybody else was doing, and then all of a sudden I just did not care. It was amazing. It was so freeing. It was like a light switch. And I knew it was the alcohol because I had just continued drinking and it was changing the way I was feeling. And then I was able to just talk to everybody and laugh and have a good time and relax. And, it was such a life-changing experience that night that I knew that I just needed to seek that out over and over. And so I did as much as I could. I think I was 15, 16, something like that. I was a freshman in high school. No, so it was later. It must have been a sophomore. Anyway, whatever. So I started drinking on my own with my friends. I would do it whenever I could. I think I first started realizing that it was kind of abnormal when I was trying to do I want to say it was my pre-cal homework. I can't remember. It was some kind of homework, but I had snuck this giant glass of Burgundy wine from the kitchen, and I had snuck it so many times at that point that every time I took, I poured some out, I would fill water up to meet the same line, so my mom wouldn't notice that it was gone. And I remember pouring it and tasting it, being like, "Ugh, this is awful." It was so watered down. And I was like, I can't keep doing this. But just to have a giant glass of wine just to study, and I'm just in high school, there was nothing, I guess, besides the, average teenage angst, there was nothing wrong with my life. There was no reason that kind of drove me to it. But it was something that I felt like I had to have. It was part of my just functioning. And I knew when I would drink that, and this continued to be something that was true in my life, I knew when I continued to drink that I couldn't engage in anything else, right? So I could not finish my homework if I started drinking. I couldn't, really focus on anything else except the alcohol. That would take a complete and total priority. And, it's somehow, and I think it's because I would plan on when I would start drinking. But I got the friends and the lifestyle and all that. And so, I guess coming up to that point in high school, because it became such a priority after my junior year, we had just finished finals, and I didn't care about class at all at that point. And I got a letter in the mail, and they said, "You are not welcome to come back next year." And I was like, "What?" I knew I'd gotten a bunch of F's, but I didn't realize that meant I would eventually get kicked out. I failed out of high school after my junior year, and it's because I prioritized drinking and partying. And so I did not want to go to a different school for my last year. I just didn't want to deal with having to meet all new people. And I'd never had a real consequence, so it actually scared me. And, I begged to get back in, and my mom went with me, and I got back in, and I was trying really, really hard this time. And I couldn't study at home because the dog was breathing too loud. And so I would go to a cafe so I could chain smoke cigarettes. And I remember sitting there one night, and this girl came in, and she graduated the year before. And we start talking. She said, "How's it going?" And I'm like, "It's actually not great right now." And I told her what had happened, and I said, "I'm trying to study. It's just really difficult." And long story short, she decided that, we talked, and I decided at the end of that discussion that she'd shared with me, and actually started finishing my sentences, that she's like, "I have something called ADD, and I think you do too." And I was like, "Oh, my mom was a learning disabilities teacher." And I said, "Okay." So I went home and I told her, and she said, "I've heard of it, but I don't really know anything about it." This is in the early 90s, so this is before it got really common, and there were a million different ways of dealing with it. And there were only two main drugs at that point, and they were really, really strong. And so when we went to the doctor, and I passed the little ADD test, he gave me one of these medications. And I'm one of those people who tried a bunch of drugs. I didn't like them. I am definitely just an alcoholic. And I hated taking this, but it did help me concentrate. And when I did graduate on time, just barely, I was on academic probation. I begged to get back into school and got back in. I was like, I'm not going to school anymore because I don't want to take these drugs. I'm like, I don't like them. They were very hard on me physically, and I was just like, all right, I'm done. But I also really, truthfully, I just wanted to go back to partying. So I graduated and then started drinking and got a job and lived at home. And, the only bill I had was my pager. And so I would just get paid every Friday and spend it all by Monday, and that was it, and that's all I wanted to do with my life. And at that point, that year, a year later, my mom convinced me to go back to school, but during that year, I had focused on drinking and partying so much that I feel like that's when I truly blossomed into being an alcoholic. By the end of that year, I could see my life going in one of two directions. And I'd only been drinking a few years at that point, but I was drinking so much, so hard, that, and the choices I'd made and the situations that I'd been in, and when you have an obligation that gets in the way of doing what you really want to do, and then that obligation is gone and you can just do what you want to do all the time. For an alcoholic, when all I want to do all the time is drinking, I end up getting into some very dark situations very quickly. I remember kind of coming to one time, and I was in the basement of some building, I don't even know, never those big sheets of plastic that they have in the murder scenes in movies. They were like hanging up everywhere, like this construction plastic, and I was like, what? And there was like some lights kind of going in the corner, and there's like this giant group circle of people, and I kind of recognized one of them, and I think we just met at the bar or something like that, or at the club, or I don't know where we were. It was a rave, I don't even know. But this was like the after party, I guess, and there were like 3 or 4 blunts being passed around and like a bunch of hard liquor bottles in the middle, and I was just like, what is happening? You know what I mean? And then I just kind of, and I don't remember the rest of the night except for being in a car at some point. And you know, I was telling Shelly and Bree as we were driving up here a story about, it was a long story too, about one night that I left the bar to get more money and put on somebody else's jacket and had no idea, no money, and ended up somehow getting a ride with the cops, like a courtesy ride to the train station, because they took pity on me because I was clearly lost, and stiffing a taxi cab and sleeping in the foyer of an apartment building all in one night, like just trying to get through, like back home. You know, and these are just like the kinds of things that I would end up doing drinking, you know, and so I knew that like my life would keep going in those directions, and God, there's so many bad stories, or that I could try to do something different. And, you know, we all know that doing something different is usually not comfortable. It's usually the last option. And I knew that whatever it was going to be better than the direction I was going in. I really did not want to do that. And, you know, I felt like I had a life that I should be using for a good purpose, and I didn't know what that was. You know, I always felt some kind of calling, but it was more of like a daydream than an actual vocation. And so I thought, you know, maybe let's just try to get an education and see where this takes me. So I went back to school, and somehow I got a major in a school that didn't have that major. So I ended up being the only one to do all that work, which was great training. But then I switched to a different school the next year, and there's like, I don't know, 100 colleges in downtown Chicago or something like that. So it was like down the block. I just had to switch to a different school. And I went to school for technical theater, and we really liked to party. So I was able to, at that time, and because, like I said, I couldn't drink and function, I would drink really, really hard at night. So during the day, I would go to school. I would go to my part-time job at school. And then after school, I would go to some rehearsal, or I would go to another part-time job. And then after that, we would go drink with the people that I had just worked with. And then after that, I would go meet my drinking crew, which was my high school friends, and all we did was drink together. So it would just be more like, you know, we'd send little pages to each other of where and what time. But we all knew exactly what we were going to do when we got there. And it was always after we'd each started drinking in other places. We'd come together and just drink really hard together. And then somehow I'd end up getting home, or maybe not, and then I would go to school the next day. And I remember one time I was on the train, or the bus, I think. I was waiting for the bus, and I was like, I feel good. Like, I drank a lot last night, and I was like, I should not feel good right now, but I feel really good. I was still wasted, you know what I mean? And I tried to hold on. I don't know if you remember when, try to use any real muscle when kind of sort of sobering up. It's like your arm just turns into jelly, right? Like there's no muscle strength. And I tried holding on to the railing on the bus, and it was just like, I was just, okay, nope, I'd rather just balance, because I was about to fall over. And then I get to school, and I sobered up in class. And I remember this was another one of those moments where I was like, oh, I might have a problem. It was a class where we were it was like lighting design or something. So we had these draft tables, and we would each sit at one separately and draw. And one day a week we'd be in lecture, and she would have us all sit at a big table, and she'd write on the board, and we'd have to copy everything down into a notebook. And I already told you, I had jelly arms, right? So I couldn't write. And I'm sitting there in class, and of course I get there late. And my friend looks at me, and he was like, "You look rough. Are you okay?" And I was like, and this was another one of my, drinking friends, and I was just like, "Yeah, I'm all right." And I tried writing, and it was just like my whole arm was like shaking, and I couldn't even get letters out. And I just calmly closed the notebook and pushed it, and I said, "I'm just going to listen today," And I was just like, I could not function. And, then things started happening, like people would make comments, and I had the full intention of eating when we would go to the bar to have dinner and then drinking. But you know how it goes. You get a shot, a beer, another shot, a beer, and then I don't need food, right? So I would just end up drinking my dinner every night. And my boss, one of my bosses for my job at school, such a sweet guy. Oh my God, his nickname was Mr. Whistles. Like, he was just such a sweetheart. He and I were working alone on a job one day, and he said, "Madeline, I'm kind of concerned about you." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "You've gotten really skinny." He's like, "You don't look that good." And I was like, "You need to mind your own business." And I just ripped his head off. And I knew while I was doing it that I didn't want to talk to him this way, that I didn't want to treat him this way, that I did not want to damage this relationship, because I have so much love and respect for him. And he'd never done anything to harm or be wrong toward me at all, ever. He was expressing love and concern, and I just was like, "No, you don't know." And I knew while I was doing it that I couldn't stop. I could not stop the words coming out of my mouth. I couldn't stop my behavior. And it scared me that I could not control my own behavior around that. There was another point where I came home after a whole day of deciding, I'm not going to drink today, I'm not going to drink today, I'm not, and today I'm taking the day off, I'm not, and I joked around I'd say a joke around. I had said I wasn't going to drink before, and then of course, classic alcoholic, by the end of the day I convinced myself that I do actually want to drink, when instead it's that I can't control it, I can't drink. This time that never happened. I never decided, yes, I want to drink. I never decided this is my idea. I've changed my mind officially, and tomorrow maybe, or whatever. The whole way home, I remember thinking, I'm not going to drink today, I'm not going to drink today. Knowing that I wanted to, but deciding I'm not going to, in other words, trying to control it. So I get home, and it was like I was on autopilot. I went straight for the freezer, opened it up. I knew I had a bottle in there, took it out, and I'm saying out loud to myself loudly, "You're not going to drink today. Don't drink today." And I just, the cap went off and the bottle went up. And that wasn't the part that scared me. It was that right after it went down, that switch flipped again. And I thought, why wouldn't I do this? Why would I? And I was aware that I had been telling myself I'm not going to drink. Why would I ever tell myself that I didn't want to drink today? And I'm like, this that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, But knowing that was my full intention in doing it anyway. And I was just like, oh. So, I don't know, just little things like that started catching my attention. And eventually I got, just like, most of us do, I got really, really depressed. And, I just kept damaging more relationships and more friendships, and felt like I couldn't trust anybody. And it just got really painful. And so I ended up, I was still getting some of that medication from a doctor, and I had actually had a few doctors before that, and they all would end up asking me how much I would drink, and I was like, that's not why I'm here, I'm getting a different doctor. And eventually I had this guy who wouldn't give me a hard time at all, and he just kind of waited, He saw me sort of disintegrating in front of him, and then one day I came in and he said, "How are you doing?" And I said, "I am not good." And I told him the truth about everything that was happening. And I don't know how he didn't lock me up. I told him that I was basically suicidal every day. But I didn't really want to die, but I did, but I didn't. And he asked me how much I was drinking, and I told him. And he was like, oh, okay, I have a coworker I think you'd like to meet. And 2 weeks later, I was in outpatient rehab. And I had seen these people smoking outside the office before, and I always thought, God, it's just such a weird group of people. Like, they never look like they would ever hang out together. I'm like, I wonder why, like, I don't know what kind of business they work for. I'm like, all different ages and nationalities and gender, and I was just like, so weird. And that was actually my outpatient group. When I walked in, I went, oh, okay. I was like, you people. And it's funny because they looked at me and they were like, there's no way. Like, she doesn't belong here. I was 23. They were like, she looks relatively healthy. Granted, I had a completely shaved head, but that's not the point. And he said, why don't you tell them how much you've been drinking? And again, I had just spelled this out for my doctor. I had no idea even before that. And it turns out that I was drinking the equivalent of, if not an actual fifth of whiskey every single night. And it was just because I had to. Like, I would start roughly 10 o'clock, and I would finish at like 3, wake up still drunk, and go do whatever I needed to do, sober up during the day, and then get wasted again that night. So I was either drunk or basically detoxing from alcoholic poisoning at any given point for a while. And so when I told them about what I was drinking, they said, oh, have a seat, you belong here. And it was in that outpatient that a couple things happened. One, I don't know, I finally started believing I was an alcoholic. They had a lot of people come in and educate us, and that was helpful. I heard that alcohol was the problem, even though it was not, but it was, but you guys know. And there was a guy. The reason I identify as an alcoholic finally is because there was a guy who was 20 years older than me, different gender, different nationality, different job, different lifestyle. He even drank different kinds of alcohol. But when he talked about how alcohol made him feel and why he drank every day, despite all of the things that were happening around him that, to a normal person would say, you probably shouldn't drink that much. The way that it made him feel and his thoughts around it, I mean, it was like, those were feelings of mine that he was describing. I'd never even tried to put that stuff into words. And he's describing my soul. And I was like, what is happening right now? Like, it just freaked me out. But I knew that whatever it is that he identified as, or whatever he thought, the problem was, that was me, and he said he was an alcoholic, and I was like, okay, I guess I'm an alcoholic too, if that's it. And, I don't know where that guy is today, but I'm grateful to him for that. So I finished the outpatient program, and I went to, I graduated. I have 1 semester left when I decided to do that. And I knew I was going to die, so my 2 goals were to graduate and not die. And so I did those things, and then I just worked. I actually became a workaholic after that. They had me get a sponsor and read the book in that program, but I'd never called her, and I thought the book was good, but I never picked it up again, the big book. So I went to meetings on my own for like a year, and not working a program, not talking to other alcoholics, not doing anything in AA except for going to meetings is a recipe for getting drunk again. At least for me, because all I could hear were the things I identified with, which was complaining about not drinking anymore, even though that's not what people were, maybe that is what they were doing, but either way, that was it. And so I stopped going, and I caught myself about 1.5 years in, curled up on my kitchen floor in the fetal position at like 3 a.m, sobbing, stone cold sober. And I was so mad because they told me, that's what I heard, that alcohol was the problem. And I had no alcohol in my body for over a year, and there was definitely still a very big problem. And I could not figure out what it was, obviously, because I was alone trying to do this, and decided the city of Chicago was my problem. So, like the whole city. Every time I left the house, I saw somebody I knew, and I resented everyone at that point. My first inventory was 11 hours long, so it was long. I hated everyone. So I did a geographic from Chicago to San Diego because it didn't snow there, basically. I knew one person that had moved there. And I got there and I saw people drinking with what the book calls impunity, which is, I guess, like basically no consequences. And so I decided, I planned it out for a week. I decided I'm gonna drink, and this is who I'm gonna do it with, and this is when, and this is where we're gonna go. And I did that. And I sat down at the bar, and I'm so glad I was able to check this off. It's not worth it, by the way, but I sat at the bar and I said, I'm going to have one of everything starting there. Just keep going down. I don't remember after like the first 10. And the next day was one of the worst hangovers I had had in my entire life. And I did, I worked at a home improvement store, and I drove a forklift completely drunk the next day. So that's not good either. But what it also did was enable me to talk to a coworker I had that I found attractive, even though he was quiet and kind of a jerk. And I found out he thought I was attractive too, and I thought, oh, it's perfect. So I asked him out, and I kept him for about 5 years. And about a year and a half into that relationship, I decided that, he decided he was going to break up with me. I had done cocaine for the first and hopefully last time in my entire life. And that was something I was like vehemently against doing because I'd known so many family members that spun out. And I decided I'm not going to ever do cocaine. And so when he found out that I did it, I hated it, by the way. Hated it. This was not like a first love addiction thing. It sobered me up instantly, and I was just like, why would anybody want that? So other people say it's so they could drink all night. I think that's, I don't think that's true. Anyway, so I told him I had done it, and he was just like, wow, you clearly don't care about yourself. I don't know how you could possibly care about me or us. And I said, no, this is all I have. And I called the number in the yellow pages for AA the next day, and somebody came and picked me up for a meeting the day after that. And I got a sponsor, and I started working the steps, and she made me pray even though I didn't believe in God. I wouldn't admit it. And so I don't know, I did everything you guys said, and I experienced spiritual freedom, and I was able to live with an active alcoholic for the first 3.5 years of my sobriety. He refused to not have alcohol in the house, which I thought was perfectly normal, but I'm an alcoholic, so whatever. And we moved I had a great sober family in San Diego, but we moved from San Diego to Las Vegas about 2 years into my sobriety, because that's where he was from. And I went to meetings out there but hated them, so I developed resentments toward all of them and all of San Diego because they didn't call me every day to see how I was doing, because they have lives. And I eventually didn't know this, but I had started planning on how I was going to drink again, even though I'd experienced total freedom in AA. I said, I didn't get sober to feel this way. And that's what I did every time that I would start to think about drinking. I'd say, I didn't get sober to do this, but it's like that was happening because I wasn't practicing any of the things in this program. So I told one person in AA that I was having those thoughts, and she immediately was like, you have to get a sponsor, like a new sponsor. And so I did. And she took me through the steps, and I experienced freedom all over again, and I was still in that relationship, which was really damaged. And I realized that I got sober to save the relationship, and then eventually I ended that relationship to save my sobriety. But that's just something that AA gave me, was the ability to have now a spiritual life, even though, and this is one of the things I absolutely love about AA, is even though at that point I still didn't believe in God, I was able to have a spiritual connection with something, and be a member of AA and work the steps to the best of my ability and experience freedom from the obsession of alcohol. This is something that I think is so special and unique about AA. And so the job I got when I got to Vegas, when they found out that my relationship ended, they offered me a position in North Carolina. They shut down their Vegas office and moved me here. And that was in 2009, and I did not want Las Vegas to happen again with me almost drinking. So I got 3 home groups and went to like 8 meetings a week. And my coworkers were funny. They were like, "We thought you didn't know anybody here. How do you have such a big social life?" And I was like, "I'm going camping." I got really involved in service right away, and I started doing Nikki Pa stuff. I was able to be a part of changing the way the hotline was set up. It was awesome. I immediately got a new sponsor, of course. And I think the only reason that job was, interested in giving me any kind of promotion or raise or move me was because I had practiced the traditions in my job. And I was trying to practice it in every area of my life. And eventually, it worked out. Right after I moved here and I got that sponsor, I was just kind of going through some emotional crises from the breakup, and my sponsor said, I want you to pray about it. And I was like, okay, look, I don't know if it's because I'm in North Carolina, this is a Bible Belt, I can't fake it anymore. I said, I don't believe in God. And I was sober at 4 years, sober for 4 years at that point. And when she said pray about it, I just went off, and I was like, I don't believe in God. And she was like, and I was like, let me tell you why. And she was just like, I don't care why. She was like, what do you believe in? And I was like, what? What do you mean? So I had to think about it, and she helped me explore something that I could connect to that was more tangible than just something out there, because that's as far as I'd gotten. But what I didn't realize too is that I had believed in the group. I believed in AA, I believed in the people. Like, I believed my sponsor hadn't had a drink, and that my first sponsor hadn't had a drink in 12 years, even though that was mind-blowing to me. And I still, it weirds me out that I have 17 years now. Like, I don't even believe it, even though I know I haven't had a drink, unless those really vivid drinking dreams count, which I don't think they do. But so, all I can say is that when I finally figured something out, and I found a higher power that I could wrap my brain and my heart around at the same time, it's like everything just kind of went from black and white to color, things started making sense and clicking. And at first I thought maybe I just finally drank the Kool-Aid, but I don't think that's what happened. I think I really truly experienced a freedom in my life that was from myself, trying to kind of control everything. And step 2 and 3 made a whole lot more sense, and I was able to really let go on a much deeper level. And that's when people started asking me to sponsor them, and when I got really, really active in service and driving people and treatment centers and stuff like that, and it was awesome. Since then, I've found some like-minded people that practice the same sort of spiritual beliefs that I have, and that has definitely enriched my life. I think that's really important to do. AA has given me the ability to actually change my life. Like, before, I did not have that. I didn't realize, but the way that this works, that alcoholism works, I believe it really is a spiritual malady, that it tells me that want to isolate, and I want to be alone, and I don't need anybody else. And that it convinces me that I don't want anybody else, and I don't want to be around anybody, and I don't care what anybody else thinks. When I'm in that place, I am so obsessed with myself, with what I believe and what I think, is I lose all connection with other people and reality. And eventually for me, because I'm an alcoholic, that means that I am going to seek alcohol as a solution again. When I'm with other people, and not just like in a car driving down here, but when I'm experiencing some kind of spiritual connection with people, like I was saying, that that singleness of purpose, that obsession to drink is long gone. It's the temptation to drink isn't there. I'm able to see, for me, what alcohol really is. And that's this, like, I don't know, it's a big lie. It's the big fat lie. I always tell my sponsees, it's the big lie. It tells me that there's spiritual fulfillment when it's really just a deeper cavern of nothingness, that makes me want to kill myself, like for real. And, I know that I need to keep doing the things that I learned in the very beginning, even though I have lots of time now, if I want to hang on to this and that freedom. One of my favorite things I've ever seen is I went to this sober brunch one time, and they had a silent auction, and they had a newcomer basket and an old-timer basket. And the newcomer basket had, all the little typical daily reading books, and the old-timer basket had the exact same books. They were just all in large print. And I was like, that's right, I did get these about 6 years ago, so anyway. But so one of the things that AA has allowed me to do, and I always forget to mention this, is I was in a job that, I know this sounds a little dramatic, but it was spiritually sucking my soul dry. But that is really what was happening. So I thought, I have way more to offer to life and just to people in general. And I'd like to be able to do that. And so I thought, I need to quit this job. It was the one that moved me here, and I'm grateful for that. But it wasn't meant to be a long-term job for me at all. And it turned into a 10-year career. And I just knew that I had more to do. So I was able to go back to school. And it took me about 4.5 years to get a 2-year degree. But I did it. And as of last year, I'm a nurse, and it just feels so good to be able to show up and do something that actually makes a difference, I work in the operating room, which is an extra bonus to me because I love everything disgusting about the body, so I get paid for that now, which is really cool. And also one of the things I want to mention, this is very specific for this weekend, is because of AA, I am the only person in my immediate family that talks to everybody in my immediate family. We are, the way that we grew up, we are seriously black belt ninjas at the silent treatment. We can be in the same room, and if this is what's going on between us, if we're doing that, it's as if there's nobody even in the house with me. It is that strong. They could be screaming and there's just nothing. It's basically a vacant room. And AA has taught me that that's not a healthy way to live. First of all, it's not how I want to live anymore. And the amends process has allowed me to repair so many of those relationships, even though they may not be perfect themselves. That's okay. I've learned to love and accept them for who they are, because I do want them in my life. And I'll sacrifice what I need to of myself in order to do that. So tomorrow, my mom turned 80 last weekend, and tomorrow I get to flying to California for one day just to surprise her. I'm so excited. I convinced her yesterday that her her present the shipping got all messed up and blah, blah, blah. And then I texted her today and I said, hey, her present has been at my brother's house for like 3 weeks. But I convinced her that I got a text from the company today that said that her present should be there by the end of the day tomorrow. She was like, oh, yay. And she doesn't know it's going to be me. But like, I'm not trying to claim credit for being able to do any of that stuff. That's all what AA has been able to give me, and it's just because I've been willing to put aside the things that I thought I wanted or needed, and pursue the things that I saw other people gaining rich and fulfilling lives from, because that's truly what I want. It's not just like the simple, immediate comforts. I want the long-term, I guess, I don't know, I don't want to say satisfaction, but that enriched kind of life that, doesn't just exist on TV, like it's actually a real thing, and a sober one at that, which is just like mind-blowing still to me. I'm very, very grateful for this program. I'm very grateful for being asked to speak. Thank you. And for my lovely car mates on the way up here. So thanks.